Hey guys, it's Jackstown and welcome back to another video. So the NBA draft was supposed to be a couple weeks ago, but for obvious reasons is delayed. But I still thought I should make a video about every NBA team's worst draft pick that just didn't pan out in the league. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on if you love sports. So without further ado, here's every NBA team's biggest draft bust of all time. Starting off with the Atlanta Hawks, we have Sheldon Williams, taken number 5 overall in 2006. Williams was as solid as they come in his 4-year career at Duke. I mean, the pedigree plus the skill seemed like a very high floor pick for the Hawks, but clearly his tweener size never allowed him to carve out a place in the league. With career averages of only 4 points and 4 rebounds per game, the Hawks also passed on Brandon Roy, Rudy Gay, JJ Redick, Rajon Rondo, and Paul Millsap just to pick Williams. Boston Celtics, Kedrick Brown, number 11 overall in 2001. The Celtics have avoided major draft disasters for the most part, but Brown goes down as a gamble that just didn't pay off. Brown had only played at junior college before declaring for the draft, but the frame and athleticism for a young player did show unlimited upside. That being said, the Celtics surely knew that Brown being a bust was a real possibility. With career averages of only 3 points and 2 rebounds per game, the Celtics did also pass on the likes of Richard Jefferson, Zach Randolph, Tony Parker, and Gilbert Arenas. Brooklyn Nets, Ed O'Bannon, number 9 overall in 1995. This was a top-heavy draft, so you can't really blame the Nets for taking O'Bannon, but he's the definition of a bust. A prolific scorer on an NCAA title team at UCLA, the 6'8" O'Bannon looked like he'd be able to step right in and score in the NBA. Instead, he was out of the league after just 2 seasons and is now known more for suing video game companies than his NBA career. He only averaged 5 points and 2 rebounds per game in his career, and although there wasn't too much talent taken after him, with Kurt Thomas, Corliss Williamson, Brent Barry, and Michael Finley being the only notable names, he is still the biggest bust in Nets history. Charlotte Hornets, Adam Morrison, number 3 overall in 2006. Morrison was a flat-out scorer in college, averaging over 28 points per game as a junior at Gonzaga. As a 6'8" forward with a high release, Morrison at the very least profiled as a 3-point specialist who could play in the league for a long time. Instead, he failed to even become a consistent role player in his 3 NBA seasons and was out of the league by 2010, going down in history as one of the worst busts of all time. And he only averaged 7.5 points and 2 rebounds per game. Therefore, he was a terrible pick. Chicago Bulls, Tyrus Thomas, number 4 overall in 2006. Speaking of Adam Morrison being a bust, 1 pick later, the Bulls took a bust of their own. The Bulls have had bad luck with number 4 overall picks, as Thomas is joined by Marcus Fitzer and Eddie Curry on the bust list, but Thomas had the worst career of all 3. A 6'9" shot-blocking power forward, Thomas averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds in his only season at LSU, and seemed like the type of NBA athlete who can turn into an all-star. Unfortunately for the Bulls, he never developed, averaging only 8 points and 5 rebounds per game for his career, and the Bulls also passed on Brandon Roy, Rudy Gay, JJ Redick, Rajon Rondo, and Paul Millsap just to get him, similar to what the Hornets also passed on. Cleveland Cavaliers, Anthony Bennett, number 1 overall in 2013. In a draft with no clear number 1 overall pick, the Cavs opted to go with Bennett, whose NBA-ready body and soft shooting touch for a big man made him as promising as any prospect that year. As it stands, the UNLV product has been on 4 NBA teams in 4 years and is now out of the league, possibly for good. With pathetic averages of 5 points and 3 rebounds per game, Anthony Bennett could go down as the worst pick in draft history. Dallas Mavericks, Randy White, number 8 overall in 1989. White was a double-double machine in his junior and senior seasons at Louisiana Tech, averaging 21 points and 10 rebounds per game in his senior season, and he'd also begun to extend his range to the 3-point line, which made him an intriguing power forward prospect. However, he was very disappointing, averaging only 7 points and 5 rebounds per game. Yep, this guy was the worst pick in Mavericks history. Denver Nuggets, Nicolas Skitishvili, number 5 overall in 2002. What was even tougher than pronouncing his name was coping with the fact that the Nuggets had taken a huge bust. International players were becoming much more popular in the draft, so the Nuggets opted to take the 19-year-old 7-footer who projected as a stretch 4 with the 5th overall pick. Things just never came together, however, and he returned to Europe after just 5 seasons in the NBA. He only averaged 3 points and 2 rebounds per game in his NBA career, and the Nuggets passed on Amari Stoudemire, Caron Butler, Tayshaun Prince, and Carlos Boozer just to take him at number 5. Detroit Pistons, Darko Milicic, number 2 overall in 2003. The Pistons were in the unique spot of drafting at number 2 with a roster pretty much in place. For that reason, they chose Darko, who they knew would take longer to develop, but possessed a sky-high ceiling as a 7-footer capable of hitting 3-pointers. Milicic never worked out in the NBA, and he'll forever be known as the man taken between LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony. And the Pistons also passed on Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, and Darko only ended up averaging 6 points and 4 rebounds in his bust-like career. Golden State Warriors, Chris Washburn, number 3 overall in 1986. In an era when big men were coveted, the 6'11" Washburn came out of NC State after averaging 18 points and 7 rebounds per game as a senior. One of the top recruits in his high school class, Golden State thought Washburn would be a franchise center for years to come. Instead, he only played 2 NBA seasons, averaging just 3 points and 2 rebounds per game. And the Warriors also passed on Chuck Person, Ron Harper, Scott Skiles, Mark Price, and Dennis Rodman. Houston Rockets, Eddie Griffin, number 7 in 2001. It's unfortunate to have a list with Griffin here, as his career was derailed by substance abuse issues before he died in a car crash tragically in 2007. The Rockets have done very well with their high draft picks over the years, so Griffin has to be their biggest bust, no matter the tragic reasons. A 6'10" do-everything forward, Griffin was considered one of the top prospects with the highest upside in the draft after averaging 18 points and 11 rebounds in one season at Seton Hall. However, he only ended up averaging 7 points and 6 rebounds per game in his 6-year NBA career, and the Rockets also passed on Joe Johnson, Richard Jefferson, Zach Randolph, Tony Parker, and Gilbert Arenas just to take him. Indiana Pacers, Jonathan Bender, number 5 overall in 1999. The only top 5 pick the Pacers have had since 1988 is also their biggest bust. Bender was an intriguing 6'11" small forward who broke Michael Jordan's record for points in the McDonald's All-American game as a senior in high school, and then decided to skip college and enter the draft. Bender was long, athletic, and had a solid shooting stroke for a player his size. Injuries, however, ran their course, cutting Bender's career to just 262 games over 11 seasons, averaging less than 25 games per season. And he only ended up averaging 6 points and 2 rebounds per game, and the Pacers ended up passing on Rip Hamilton, Andre Miller, Shawn Marion, Jason Terry, Corey Maggette, and the infamous Metta World Peace. Los Angeles Clippers, Michael Olowokandi, number 1 overall in 1998. Olowokandi ended up having a decent career, but the fact that the number 1 overall pick never became a star reiterated the idea of the Clipper curse that permeated the franchise for years. A mobile, rim-protecting 7-footer, Olowokandi averaged 22 points and 11 rebounds per game in college before declaring for the draft after his junior year at Pacific University. He only ended up averaging 8 points and 7 rebounds per game, which is nowhere close to the expectations of a number 1 overall pick, and the Clippers also ended up passing on Mike Bibby, Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter, Dirk Nowitzki, and Paul Pierce, 5 stars in the league at one point. Los Angeles Lakers, George Lynch, number 12 overall in 1993. It's hardly fair to say that a number 12 pick in the draft who ended up playing 12 seasons in the NBA is a bust, but the Lakers' draft history is pretty much spotless. With the few high picks they've had, they've basically hit home runs. Lynch qualifies as their biggest bust after coming to the team during their post-Magic, pre-Kobe and Shaq years when they were in need of scoring. Lynch had just led North Carolina to the national title, averaging 15 points and 10 rebounds per game in college when the Lakers selected him. However, he only ended up averaging 7 points and 5 rebounds in his extended career, and the Lakers did pass on Chris Mills and Sam Cassell. Although those two never became stars, they were much better role players than Lynch was. Memphis Grizzlies, Hasheem Thabeet, number 2 overall in 2009. A huge bust at 7'3", quite literally. Thabeet was one of the most intriguing big man prospects in years. An elite shot blocker, Thabeet was a project, but one that the Memphis Grizzlies hoped would solidify the middle for years to come. He averaged 14 points, 11 rebounds, and an astonishing 4.2 blocks per game in his final season at UConn, but was never able to figure things out in the NBA, averaging a pathetic 2 points and 3 rebounds per game. Worst of all, the Grizzlies passed on 3 superstars in James Harden, Steph Curry, and DeMar DeRozan just to get him. Miami Heat, Michael Beasley, number 2 overall in 2008. Beasley was considered the second best prospect in the draft after averaging a ridiculous 26 points and 12 rebounds a game in his only season at Kansas State. It's not that Beasley hasn't had a decent career, he has, but when you look at expectations plus the players who were taken behind him, he definitely does go down as a bust. The players taken behind him were, of course, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love, and Brook Lopez. And he only ended up averaging 13 points and 5 rebounds per game, which doesn't scream great for a number 2 overall pick. Milwaukee Bucks, Robert Tractor Traylor, number 6 overall in 1998. It's unfortunate to have to discuss Traylor in this light after his untimely death in 2011, but the main reason that Traylor was a bust is the fact that he was traded for Dirk Nowitzki on draft day. That's not something that can be easily forgotten. A bruiser power forward out of Michigan, he averaged 16 points and 10 rebounds in his junior season. Traylor's game just never translated to the NBA, as the Bucks passed on Dirk Nowitzki, Paul Pierce, and Rashard Lewis to get him, and he only averaged 5 points and 4 rebounds per game in his short NBA career. Minnesota Timberwolves, Wesley Johnson, number 4 overall in 2010. Minnesota has had some big busts in recent memory, including Johnny Flynn and Derek Williams, but the players taken behind Johnson made him the franchise's biggest bust. Johnson has turned into a serviceable role player over the past few years, but nothing close to what the Wolves had in mind when they took him number 4 overall. Although older than other prospects in the draft, Johnson's athleticism and ability to play multiple positions made him an attractive prospect. He averaged 17 points and 9 rebounds in his only season with Syracuse after transferring from Iowa State. And the Timberwolves, as I mentioned, did pass on big names, including DeMarcus Cousins, Gordon Hayward, and Paul George. New Orleans Pelicans, Julian Wright, number 13 overall in 2007. The Pelicans' history only dates back to 2003, so they haven't had much time for major busts. Wright is as close as it gets. Although the number 13 pick isn't expected to necessarily be a star, Wright was particularly futile as an NBA player. After coming out of Kansas as a nightly double-double threat, he only ended up playing 4 seasons in the NBA, averaging 4 points and 2 rebounds, and the Pelicans did end up passing on Nick Young, Wilson Chandler, and Aaron Aflalo, who were more prominent scorers available at that time. New York Knicks, Mike Sweetney, number 9 overall in 2003. For as much as Knicks fans boo and complain about their draft picks every year, they don't actually have that many busts. Although Frank Ntilikina could be heading in that direction, it's still way too early. Sweetney, however, for now, was the worst of the bunch, putting together 2 forgettable seasons in New York before being traded to the Bulls in exchange for Eddie Curry. Sweetney was a talented power forward who averaged 23 points and 10 rebounds at Georgetown his junior year before declaring for the draft. And the Knicks did end up passing on better role players such as Nick Collison, Luke Ridnour, David West, Boris Diaw, and Kendrick Perkins, and Sweetney ended his career only averaging 6 points and 4 rebounds per game. Oklahoma City Thunder / Seattle Supersonics, Robert Swift, number 12 overall in 2004. The Supersonics knew that taking an 18-year-old Swift straight out of high school was a gamble, but they probably expected to get a little more out of their investment. A true 7-footer, Swift dealt with injuries and only played 97 games in 5 seasons with the franchise, and he only averaged 4 points and 4 rebounds per game for his career. And the Thunder / Sonics at the time, ended up passing on Al Jefferson, Josh Smith, J.R. Smith, and Jameer Nelson to get Swift. Orlando Magic, Fran Vasquez, number 11 overall in 2005. When you use the number 11 pick in a draft on a player, you probably expect him to play for your team at some point. There are conflicting reports as to whether or not Vasquez did or did not tell the Magic he was willing to play in the NBA for them, but he never ended up playing. The Magic still own his draft rights, but at 37 years old, it appears his NBA window has closed. And the Magic did end up passing on more notable names such as Danny Granger, Gerald Green, Nate Robinson, and David Lee. Philadelphia 76ers, Sharon Wright, number 6 overall in 1994. The Sixers have a good draft history, even before the process. Even Wright actually put up decent numbers for the Sixers, but they traded him to the Raptors during his second year in the league. Wright's performance dropped considerably before a car accident in 1997 essentially ended his NBA career. He went on to play for many years overseas, however, but he never panned out in the NBA with averages of only 10 points and 5 rebounds per game, which does not live up to the expectations of a number 6 pick. And the Philadelphia 76ers ended up passing on more star-caliber players such as Eddie Jones and Jalen Rose. Phoenix Suns, William Bedford, number 6 overall in 1986. Bedford was a lanky 7-footer out of the University of Memphis who averaged 17 points and 9 rebounds per game. The Suns traded Bedford after just 1 season, though, as he struggled with substance abuse issues. Although his career was short, he did win an NBA title with the Pistons in 1990, but that isn't any saving grace for him as a bust, as he only averaged 4 points and 2 rebounds per game, and the Suns passed on 4 prominent guards in Ron Harper, Del Curry, Scott Skiles, and Mark Price just to get Bedford. Portland Trailblazers, Greg Oden, number 1 overall in 2007. Oden was fine when he played, he just couldn't stay on the court, so he goes down as one of the biggest busts of all time. The Blazers catch flack for taking Oden over Kevin Durant, but Oden was the consensus number 1 player in the 2007 draft after leading Ohio State to the national title game as a freshman. Oden's 6-year NBA career was ravaged by injuries. He only played 105 games, but he did manage to win a ring with the Miami Heat in 2014. However, with his only 8-point and 6 rebound per game averages, he is a huge bust, and the Trailblazers obviously passed on the likes of Kevin Durant, Al Horford, Mike Conley, and Joakim Noah. Sacramento Kings, Thomas Robinson, number 5 overall in 2012. Robinson, who averaged nearly 18 points and 12 rebounds per game at Kansas, was so disappointing that in his rookie season, the Kings traded him just 51 games into his career. He's since bounced around and has never found a home in the NBA as an undersized power forward who can't shoot. Making matters worse is the fact that Damian Lillard was drafted directly behind him. With career averages of only 5 points and 5 rebounds per game, Robinson's a huge bust, and the Kings also passed on Harrison Barnes and Andre Drummond just to get him. San Antonio Spurs Alfredrick Hughes, number 14 overall in 1985. Searching for a bad Spurs draft pick is like trying to find a smile in one of Greg Popovich's sideline interviews. It's just not going to happen. That being said, we have to pick someone, so Hughes gets the dubious distinction. He averaged 26 points and 10 rebounds per game at Loyola Chicago, but played just one season in the NBA before finishing his career overseas and in the Canadian Basketball Association. He only averaged 5 points and 2 rebounds per game in that one season, and they did pass on Joe Dumars, AC Green, and Terry Porter just for the Spurs to take Hughes. Toronto Raptors, Rafael Arujo, number 8 overall in 2004. Yes, I looked it up, even though it's not spelled like that. That's how you pronounce it, apparently. Arujo was a Brazil native who averaged 18 points and 10 rebounds per game at BYU before being taken with the 8th overall pick. He was about as big a bust as you can be in the NBA, making virtually no impact in 2 seasons in Toronto before being shipped off to the Jazz. He played 1 season there before heading overseas to finish up his career. With pathetic career averages of just 3 points and 3 rebounds per game, the Raptors also passed on the likes of Andre Iguodala, Al Jefferson, Josh Smith, and J.R. Smith to take Arujo. Utah Jazz, Dante Exum, number 5 overall in 2014. Yes, he's only 24 years old, and yes, some people might think it's too early, but he has been in the league for 6 years, and although he's still on an NBA roster, he's still currently on the Cleveland Cavaliers, his career has been a huge bust, due to injuries partly, but he's only averaged 6 points and 2 assists per game, and has showed no signs of being close to a star anytime soon. Therefore, Dante Exum deserves to be the biggest bust in Jazz history. Last but not least, Washington Wizards Kwame Brown, number 1 overall in 2001. One of the most infamously worst draft picks taken by, at that time, Wizards GM Michael Jordan, Kwame Brown, although he did stick around in the NBA for 12 seasons, he was a huge bust who was absolutely exposed by pretty much all other big men in the league, and he turned out to be a liability on most teams, and is going to go down in history for being a pathetically bad pick. Kwame Brown only averaged 7 points and 6 rebounds just to prove how much of a disappointment he was, and although the 2001 draft wasn't exactly star-studded, Washington Wizards would have been much better off selecting either Pau Gasol or Tyson Chandler, 2 much better big men who have actually had very successful careers and are still hanging around in the NBA.
Kwame Brown, God bless him, is a scrub.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications if you love sports, movies, TV shows, and video games. We talk about all that stuff on this channel. And also, leave in the comments below your opinion on some other big draft busts that your team has taken. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you all later.